the economy. It's biting on everybody. There is nobody that is smiling, at least at the level of business, at least at the level of a worker. I mean, look at the value of the naira. Look, Buhari, yes, did good in increasing the minimum wage, but the minimum wage today is almost at the same value of what it was maybe 8 years ago. Okay, the value of 30,000. Well, probably can't get what you got 8 years ago for 15,000 naira. Just if, for example, a bag of rice 8 years ago, maybe about 12,000. Well, a bag of rice today is in the range of 35, 40,000 naira, depending on what area of the country you're getting that local bag of rice from. Yeah. So the challenges are much, and has been accentuated by the cashless policy, which has made a lot of people, uncomfortable economically. Yeah. So these are the things that we hope that we work together in the Federation of Nigeria to help the incoming administration to move forward. I was there at the last inauguration of President Muhammadu Buhari in 2019. The mood was different from 2015 when he won the elections. The mood today is a little bit different. It's a little bit more subdued, a little bit more somber, a little bit more challenged. Thus, we have to do everything possible to make sure that we put aside our political differences, our ideologies, and move forward with just the ideology of one Nigeria, and well, we await the outcome of the
I think when we talk about one Nigeria, a lot of Nigerians have said, look, before we even begin to talk about peace and reconciliation, there has to be justice served, and that's what a lot are waiting to get from the court. But let's just leave that aside. One other thing I want us to look at, when we talk about expectations, would we say Nigerians are actually expecting so much from this particular administration? Also owing to the fact that we are coming from the back end of a Buhari-led administration and an APC-led government. I was just looking at something yesterday, analysis of how many times ASU went on strike and a totality of how many days ASU went on strike during the period that Buhari was in power, and it amounted to over 600 days. Now, what should we expect more, or we should just leverage on, okay, yes, APC did this, our Buhari's administration did that?
Well, if you look at the number of days that ASU went on strike, some other person might say, could this have been handled differently? Should they have just gone to court while still tutoring our young ones? Because our young ones were the ones that bore the brunt of the strike. It's unfortunate. Some also would argue, well, Buhari did a lot of good things in establishing federal universities all over the country. There are quite a good number of universities that he did establish. In this area, was there a certain level of failure? Yes. We all have to admit that anytime there is a strike that affects the students, affects the quality of education in our country, it's classified as a failure, no matter how you look at it. Do we have lessons that we can learn from that? Yes, there are lessons that we should be able to learn from that. Will this incoming administration learn those lessons? Well, it seems like there is a certain level of persistency with this strike, and it's not just Buhari's administration, and I'm not making excuses for him. I'm simply saying that it's become systemic in nature, and we all have to put our hands together and say, how can we end this strike? What is the root cause of the strike? What did the academic staff of universities actually achieve at the end of this strike? It leaves a lot wanting to be factual about it. Unfortunately, these strikes did happen. But did the educational sector actually benefit from the strikes? I doubt it. So the blame is apportioned to both sides. The government in its inability to end the strike and meet with the ASU staff hierarchy in a timely manner and relieve the burden of the strike from the young ones being our children and being our students. If you want to judge the outgoing administration by that, there are more things to judge them.
That's just one out of the so many situations that we would use to judge the past administration.
I think the administration has done some good things, and I think the administration has failed woefully in some other areas. When you look at the good things, the woeful part of it is the insecurity, the failure of the architecture. infrastructure in the country. There is no part of the country today that is safe, that you can drive out at 1 a.m. and come back home without feeling a certain level of anxiety. You can't drive across the country feeling safe anymore. You can't drive from here to Zaria and say you are feeling safe, or to Kano, or to Kaduna, or to Borno State. There are certain parts of the country that are under siege. So in terms of this administration's successes and failures, this is the most prominent. Insecurity. Where there is no security, there is just no development. That is a fact of itself. But you also look at the successes of this administration. They are a little bit hidden. When you look at the discrimination against disabled persons, prohibition, that is huge. Just look at it. Disabled persons are at the fringe end of the society. Now we are going to be able to bring them in. If you go to most government buildings, for example, there are no ramps for disabled persons to be able to go into the building itself, and it's so humiliating to a disabled person when he has to solicit help to be carried up the steps or into a building. Now that will end. When you look at the Business Facilitation Act itself, it's a hidden law that has been enacted and signed into being by this administration. Sometimes you go to a government office and you file a request and it's just ignored. It's put aside. And you wait 6 months, you wait 1 year, you wait 2 years, you just hear nothing from them. But the Business Facilitation Act actually empowers the person in terms of the onus of acting. Now rest on the government parastatal or department. If they don't act, it means they've consented to your request within 6 months. Now, if they don't want to consent to your request, then they have to respond. Now that gives people a timeline in terms of, when I make this request to the department, I'm going to get my response within a certain time frame. That has moved the business environment in a positive manner further. And the KAMA Act that has come to play, and the much controversial Electoral Act of 2022, although it failed to some extent in 2023 presidential elections, it failed in implementation because people deliberately, obstructed it. But it did succeed in Anambra, it did succeed in Ekiti, it did succeed in Osun. So we have to now stand back and say, even with this law in place, there were challenges. Could it have been better in terms of implementation? Yes. Is this government responsible for that level of failure? Well, in retrospect, in hindsight, I'll leave others, especially when the tribunal comes back with its decision. I'll leave that decision to be made by the tribunal and to the people of the Federation of Nigeria. Have people become more impoverished in the Federation of Nigeria? That is a resounding yes. Despite the fact that the government has succeeded in a lot of things, okay? If it has failed economically, well, the stomach is the infrastructure that is the most important part of it. So if it has failed economically, well, a lot of people don't care. You build highways, you build roads, whatever you do, if they can't have 3 square meals a day, it is a failure. Because when you can't feed yourself, you can't send your children to school, you can't buy a car, you can't pay rent, you can't pay your transport to work, it has a domino effect that actually dampens the mood of the society.
Now, I'm even happy that you've been able to enumerate some of these failures in the past administration. It's past because, of course, we'll be seeing a new administration today. Now, when we are coming from this kind of background, and it's the same party, the All Progressives Congress, that is producing the next president, so what hope do we have? Because I think that during the campaigns now, Francis, we've heard Bola Ahmed Tinubu saying that, he's going to continue from where President Muhammadu Buhari stopped. So if President Muhammadu Buhari has not been able to give Nigerians a good outing for the past 8 years, then what should we be expecting from a Bola Ahmed Tinubu? I know that he's more like a technocrat. Fantastic. They always take it back to Lagos State and all the things that he did. But you have said it that strength is failing, of course, because of age. So what should we be expecting? What are the agendas that we should be setting for the next administration?
Well, look at it this way. We have a national team that we all love and adore, the Green Eagles or Super Eagles.
Super Eagles.
So if they lose a match, Does it mean we have to scrap the name and scrap the whole team and believe that they will never win? The fact that APC is the one that is still going to continue in power does not mean that the goals and objectives will remain the same. The level of vigor in implementing and making changes will remain the same. That there will be a failure in government where the outgoing administration failed. Now we are going to have different people in government now. Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the incoming president, is going to have his own team, and we can only hope that this team will reflect a different philosophy and ideology for Nigeria. Not everyone in this outgoing administration will be in Bola Ahmed's team. And the fact that it is the All Progressive Congress that will continue in power as a party does not mean that the persons that will take over will share the same ideology. And, to be honest about it, the political parties in Nigeria do not really have a definite ideology. It is a matter of, well, I'm in power, so I'll do what is the best, I believe is best for the government now. There is no definite ideology. One of the things I would definitely want to see the incoming administration move away from is nepotism, is a religious bias, is a tribal bias, is regional bias, and focus more on competence and those who want to actually govern the country. Good governance. That is the ideal situation that we do want to see. The fact that it is APC that will continue does not mean that the failures of the outgoing administration will continue. It doesn't mean that the successes of the outgoing administration will continue. It simply just means that a different set of people with probably a different set of ideologies and policies will now get into power. And hopefully, if we all work together, we can bring a different and new dawn for the Federation of Nigeria.
I like the finishing point now.
Okay, so
more like there is hope.
There is hope.
There is always hope where there is life.
Well, that's the only thing we have to hold on to when we lose every other thing. But I like to come from a different point of view. The Buhari administration is leaving behind a lot of debt for the nation. And there is a lot of concern from all quarters. Recently, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, had advised Nigeria, and particularly the incoming administration, to look in the area of revenue generation. But taking a cue from what the Mozambique government are currently trying to do, pay cuts for government officials, politicians, we all know how much our politicians take home. Is that the kind of conversation we should begin to push forward as the incoming administration comes on board, as a way of further reducing the cost of governance, which has been a major cause for concern?
I think when people talk about pay cuts, they are looking at it from the prism of punitive measures. The politicians should not be earning this much. They should reduce their pay. It doesn't change anything. It is the politics. It is the ideology that actually does work. When you look at debt, well, if you look at Mozambique, well, let's wait and see if they will succeed in that regard, because politicians are one of the most ingenious set of human beings on earth. You can take everything away from them and they find a way to even take more back from you. When you look at debt itself, look at the US government. They've just hit the ceiling or about to hit the ceiling, and there are now a lot of wrangling around how do we increase the debt ceiling so that we do not have a default. So Nigeria is not the only country that is indebted in the world. The United States is indebted, France is indebted, United Kingdom, England is indebted. Almost every country is indebted. Now the challenge is, when you borrow, what do you use these funds for? Is it for frivolities? Is it for the development of infrastructure so that people can now have a source of income, or they can be internally generated revenue that will help to propel the economy forward? Remember when Barack Obama came into power in 2008? There was a lot of borrowing because he needed to sustain the economy and hold the economy's bottom from bottoming out. People were losing their jobs in thousands at that point in time. The money that he borrowed was used effectively to strengthen General Motors, to strengthen other financial institutions, and the country's economy stabilized. So the money has been borrowed by the outgoing administration, what has it been used for? When you look at some of the things, and I'm not holding brief for them, you look at Nigeria Air, that was a blatant misrepresentation. There is nothing like Nigeria Air. I understand
but we saw airplanes.
It flew back to Ethiopia, so just forget about that. But when you look at it, the second Niger bridge is in place. I don't know if you've gone to the west or the north by road. You would really enjoy that second Niger bridge. You don't have to wait at the bridge for hours and hours and hours for one side to be passed through, and then you pass through. So that's good. The federal universities that have come into place, that is good. The strengthening of the military has really been strengthened, especially the Navy and the Air Force. Those canoes that have been bought, they cost a lot of money. That's it. But a lot of the monies that have been borrowed has been frittered away by corruption and by fraud. The level of corruption in this administration is, to be very kind to them, shocking and unfortunate, because we really thought that the statement, if we don't end corruption, corruption will end us. If we don't kill corruption, corruption will kill us. Either way you want to take that phrase. They've not been able to deal with corruption at the level and with the sense of intensity that we would have preferred. Because if a country is rife with corruption, then the economy of that country will suffer. But when you look at the totality of Nigeria, the end of corruption will not be achieved by the government alone. It should be achieved by the government with the collaboration and cooperation of everyone. We have what is called, under the Ministry of Information, the National Orientation Agency, and I don't know, a lot of people did live through Buhari's first coming with the war against indiscipline. If that had succeeded, we would not be where we are. But if the National Orientation Agency has been properly strengthened and the information sent out, we would have a lot of changes. If you want to understand what corruption is, just go on the road and see the different task forces, see the different police organizations, see the different immigration, see customs. At every point of the road, you are going to have to deal with corruption. You obviously have videos online with people bribing officials.
Okay.
I'm not focusing on the police because it's everybody. It is against the law to give, and it is against the law to receive bribe. If you go to government offices, are you able to carry out a transaction without having to meet someone to say, here is 2,000, here is 3,000, push my file forward? This is the corruption that actually does inhibit the growth of the country. It will take someone strong-willed who will actually allow our institutions to grow, and then the strengthening of those institutions will now wipe away corruption. I like what the Nigerian police force is doing. If you look at the Police Enactment Act that Buhari signed into being, I believe that was 2018 or 2019, you see that one of the goals was better policing and a better police force for the Federation of Nigeria. That is why you see the responsiveness of the police whenever you see videos or concrete evidence of police brutality or police corruption. They are dealt with immediately, as against before, where the police force would just ignore such incidents. But right now, yes, they are dealt with. They are removed from the force. There is an orderly room trial. There is a court trial, and they are dealt with. So now you have a certain level of confidence that if you have proof that the police has dealt with you in a manner that is in violation of the ethics of policing in the Federation of Nigeria, that you are going to hear from the police force and they are going to act. That is the beginning of positive movement for the country.
Okay, now let's go back to the person of the President-elect Ahmed Bola Tinubu. Now, he's been said to be the Jagaban, the grandfather of all the godfathers in the Nigerian political scene. And he has shown himself within the electioneering period to be just that. Do you think he has the political will to actually ensure that our institutions are strengthened? Because it seems that is where the biggest challenges rest.
Well, my favorite football team is Rangers International of Enugu. And Christian Chukwu was a fantastic footballer. Emmanuel Okala was one of the best goalkeepers. But can they play today? No. One of those that Super Eagles did win the Olympics Cup a few years ago. Nwankwo was there, Jejo Kocha was there, but can they play today? No. Every man has his time and an era. I wish that Bola Ahmed Tinubu had run actually in 2015 when he was at his peak, generally, so to speak, in terms of prowess. But he's alive. He says he doesn't need the Olympic spirit or the energy of an Olympian to be able to run a country as diverse as Nigeria, as challenging as Nigeria. I wish him and the Federation good luck from the bottom of my heart, because the success of Jagaban is the success of Nigeria and myself as well. So we must all cooperate. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at this man, no matter his age, his achievement, he's one of the best in terms of human capital and capacity. He's just one of the very best. The other person that has probably come close or done better than him has been former General Babangida, who has all his boys in so many different positions. But Bola Ahmed Tinubu has developed a lot of people. Let's take a look at his contemporaries. Have they been able to, were they able to develop as many people and put as many people in different positions of authority and power and grow so many people? Maybe, but I just don't see any of his contemporaries as a governor who was able to do so. But does it mean that he still has that vigor, that ability, that strength to be able to run a country as complex as Nigeria? Some think so. And that is why he was declared as the president of the last elections. And we have to give him the opportunity to do so. Until the tribunal says otherwise, or the tribunal actually affirms the decision by INEC and supposedly a majority of Nigerians.
Okay, so another thing now, you mentioned the fact that, and we all know, Nigeria cannot thrive just because we have somebody at the helms of affairs. It needs our collective contributions. Now, there is something called the whistleblower policy in Nigeria, and that has not been functioning, owing to some of the challenges that have been pointed out. You can call the security agencies, you give an information, and you're not even sure your safety is going to be protected. Now, in these regards, what do you think can be done differently for the Nigerian people to now take that individual responsibility to know that, yes, when I reach out to government officials, to government agencies, I am going to be protected, and so encourage them to do their part?
That might be a failure of the institution, not a failure of the government. It means there are people in a position of authority that should be able to deal with the whistleblower policy and the affirmations of that policy in terms of protecting the whistleblower who are failing. Now, that happens everywhere in the world. There's a whistleblower policy in the United States of America. Does it work all the time? No. That's why sometimes people in witness protection boxes actually do get killed. And people that have actually come out as whistleblowers actually do lose their jobs. It's a dicey situation, because remember, for the whistleblower policy to be effective, you have to bring forth information that is not readily available to the general public, or is not readily available with due diligence to the police with at least minimal investigation. That's the standard. So when a person says, I'm a whistleblower, and I gave them information and they fail to act in a reasonable manner or in an appropriate manner using that information, it means that to a certain extent that the information passed by the whistleblower did not meet that threshold of not being readily available according to the law to the public, or not being readily available with at least minimal diligence by the police force.
Okay, I think yesterday we heard the president-elect also say that this has been a dream of his, wanting to become the president, that he campaigned for it, and he won the election, so nobody should pity him because he has the capacity to do the job, and all Nigerians should also know that he is ready for the job as well. But unity has been one very major conversation and advice that has been given to the president-elect, who will be the president today, that there should be that ability from his side to be able to unite Nigerians again.
Well, today Nigerians appear to be even more disunited.
Along ethnic lines?
Yes, ethnic lines, political lines, religious lines, tribal lines, more than before the Civil War and after the Civil War. I learned how to count in Hausa, Dayabyuku, Huku, up to 4. I can go up to 5. I learned to count in Igbo, as well. I learned to count in Yoruba as well, at least to a certain number, and of course my Ibibio as well. But the differences today keeps us in silos, such that we don't even reach out to understand each other as well. Growing up, we used to have Salah. We celebrated Salah, Baraka the Salah, we said to each other. But now it is regarded as a Muslim holiday that we must not participate in because we don't want to be associated with that. Well, I would also say that it is more difficult now to have persons from different ethnic backgrounds coming to be on the governing council of a University of Uyo, which is a federal university, or in a different university, if they are of a different region and different ethnic background. I remember my mother was in the governing council for University of Ife, Ile-Ife, and Ahmadu Bello University, and she used to fly out there or drive out there without hindrance. But that is not happening anymore. Any non-ethnic vice chancellor that goes to any federal university is challenged as not being one of ours, which is not true. So the level of disunity in the Federation of Nigeria has to be dealt with. The Presidential Tribunal, the Presidential Transition Council, actually did send out messages of unity and sent out messages of supporting the incoming government. I think that was commendable, but it also speaks to the fact that they notice and realize that there is a high degree of disunity and unacceptance of the incoming administration.
Anyways, I would say a very big thank you to you, Anthony Asukwa Mendy Chibong Esquire. It's always a pleasure having you, and always great to listen to you, do your analysis and all of that. But a very big thank you to you.
Thank you, Francis.
We also hope to have you consequently on the show, definitely.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the much we'll be taking for this particular segment. When we come back again, we'll have our next guest join us this morning, and of course we'll be looking at Akwa Ibom State. We know that the baton is going to be changing hands this morning, I think by 10 o'clock or so, Francis. Yes, the baton will be changing hands from the administration of Udom Emmanuel to that of Pastor Umoino, and of course his deputy Afion Eyarayi. But how has the administration of Umoino been so far, the 8 years, and what will be the expectations of Akwa Ibomites also from the administration of Pastor Umoino? This and more we'll be having very shortly. Don't go nowhere.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon. "23 years since the advent of uninterrupted civilian rule in Nigeria, and the nation is bracing itself for another major transition. The stage is set for the formal transfer of power from one administration to another, as the Eagle Square, Abuja, plays host to the top brass of the country's political elite and distinguished invited guests to affirm her status as a democratic nation. Join us on Spectrum Television for a live broadcast of the 2023 handing over and inauguration ceremony of President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Grand Commander of the Federal Republic (GCFR), as the 16th elected President of Nigeria, and Vice President-elect Senator Kashim Shettima, Grand Commander, Order of the Niger (GCON). Date: Monday, May 29, 2023. Time: 10 a.m. Join the live broadcast on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with live feeds on all our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. The May 29 presidential inauguration ceremony on Spectrum Television. We broaden your horizon.
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
Glad to welcome you back. It's still Rise and Shine, coming to you live on Spectrum Television, and today is all about the inauguration of the incoming administration, talking about President-elect, who will, of course, starting today, be called the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and his vice, talking about Senator Shatim Kashima. And back here in Akwa Ibom State, you're looking at Pastor Umoino as the governor-elect, who will no longer be governor-elect, but governor. And his deputy, the distinguished Senator Akone Yanyi, will also no longer be deputy governor-elect, but the deputy governor. And joining us on set today to further look into the different issues, particularly focusing on Akwa Ibom State, is Professor Etefia Ekanem, is the Dean Student Affairs, University of Uyo. Is also a professor of law. Good morning and welcome to Rise and Shine, Prof.
Prof, I know that you've come on the, how would I put it now? Okay, let me leave the way I'm thinking, okay. But let's go straight into the conversation. Yes, change of baton from one administration to the other. How does it make you feel? Let's start from there. What's the feeling this morning?
Yeah, for me, today, May 29th, is 2023. It's like every other day. But I know that we are full of expectations with mixed feelings. We've had these kind of expectations before. Maybe perhaps as we are growing, we are adding years to our lives, we are beginning to come to the conclusion that we just live. Let's just live, because we have had expectations in the past that were cut short. The last transition, I was really very active. That was 2015, 2019. And if we didn't have the government we had at the national level, I'd have lived all my life believing that Buhari was the president, with the man who could have turned things around for Nigeria. And one could have continued believing that if we had given him the opportunity, that Nigeria would have turned Nigeria into an El Dorado. 2015 came, and God gave us the opportunity. We renewed that mandate in 2019. Today, the story is clear. Same thing in the States. In the state, we have